Okay, done. It's recording. Yep. So, Dimitris,
Okay.
stage is yours.
Hold on. Let me share my screen then. This one. Okay. You can see
your
my
screen.
Oops. You can see the title, right?
Yeah, exactly. The first screen. So
perfect. Okay, so let's start. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining today's presentation. My name is Dimitris, Principal Global Security Director at Trustwave, and today I will be taking you through a rather interesting presentation around data security, and more specifically on how Trustwave tools can help businesses secure their data. So let's start. Here is the agenda of today's session. My aim is to have a fairly short PowerPoint deck. I don't want to kill you by PowerPoint, which will be just useful to visualize our view on data security landscape and explain Trustwave approach to database security before we move on to the interesting bit, which is the product's demo. Feel free to stop me at any time. As I said, ask questions, post them in the chat, and I'm sure that Thomas will help out and let me know, because more than likely I will not be seeing those as I speak. That's fine. Now, a few words about myself. I'm Greek, and I've been around in IT for more than 20 years now. I have a quite broad experience working in different parts of the cybersecurity field, such as network and security engineer, consultant, trainer, and system integrator, service provider, enterprise businesses in Greece before moving over to the UK and worked as a Cisco security consultant for Cisco Gold Partner, and then in Trustwave. I'm almost 6 years now with Trustwave, a long time, but it's definitely not a boring company to work for. Throughout these 6 years, I've worked on pretty much all products and services Trustwave offered. Started off as a senior AC covering South Europe and Middle East. And then as I went along, I worked with more geography. Whole of Africa and some Central European countries were added. Long story short, been promoted a few times to the global role I am today, which focuses on data security. So lastly, life is not just work, there's more to it. So when I have some spare time, I try to spend it riding my motorcycle or being underwater. Okay, let me give you a quick overview about Trustwave. Established in 1995, Trustwave is a global MSSP headquartered out of Chicago. In 2015, Trustwave were acquired by Singtel, Singapore Telecom, and ever since recognized as the cybersecurity arm of Singtel. So one of the leaders in Gartner Magic Quadrant for MSS, having several points of presence across the globe. Trustwave is a pure play cybersecurity company offering not just consultancy and professional services to businesses that want to assess their current security maturity, build or enhance their security maturity posture, but also boots on the ground implementation services to help them execute that plan using our own tools and also tools from selected top-notch partners. And that is before our MSS team, which is located in 9 global follow the threat SOCs, monitor 24/7 the threats to the business assets and are ready to act proactively or reactively in case an attack is ongoing. Security research, penetration testing, red teaming, and instant response services are also part of the Trustwave portfolio delivered by Team Spider Labs. Maybe you're aware of Team Spider Labs. In case you're not, just a few words about them. Within Trustwave, there is this elite team of security researchers, ethical hackers, forensic investigators, and responders. This is, in a sense, the team Spider Labs. So their work and expertise is providing cybersecurity intelligence for all Trustwave products and services. And within Team Spider Labs, there is a dedicated database security research team focusing on identifying vulnerabilities in the platforms supported by the products we will be discussing today. Any questions so far, guys? Oh. So to level set our discussion, I will start with a fairly obvious observation that almost every attack vector leads to data compromise, right? Regardless of the actual attack avenue, such as phishing, social engineering, password-based attacks, and so on, the intermediate step of the attackers is to compromise user accounts, exploit vulnerabilities on operating systems or networks or applications, escalate their privileges, move laterally, and establish themselves in the victim's infrastructure. So from there, the next step is to get their hands on the sensitive data. PII, credit card data, and other sensitive information each company has, maybe it's intellectual property or sales information or what have you, which more than likely are stored in databases or other data stores. So our discussion today would be revolving around the suggested way to secure data on the last mile of this chain. I will quickly cover the fact that besides the security concern to keep data private and away from attackers' reach, several compliance regulatory bodies around the world require that businesses who are ultimately responsible to secure their data should implement reasonable protection controls, or else fines or other penalties such as jail time or revocation of the authorization to operate will be in effect. So more specifically, almost all well-known regulators, including the European GDPR, require businesses to be on top of the data protection program, so they have an accurate inventory of databases in their control, perform frequent vulnerability assessment, user entitlement reviews, enforce separate and do continuous monitoring within each and every business. So as we will see in a moment, these audit requirements are addressed by Trustwave database security products. So just keep that table at the back of your mind. Now, in more technical terms, the way businesses operate today leads to a world of data store diversity, right? Depending on data volume, structure, access patterns, and application requirements. So we no longer see that relational databases are used for every single use case. We're now living in the world of purpose-built data stores. So this is a high-level overview of the modern data stores. All of them are largely classified in two main categories. Data stores for transactional workloads, online transaction processing or OLTP, and data stores for analytical workloads or OLTP. In the relational or SQL category, we will find data stores that handle structured data like Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, SAP, and others. While for semi-structured or unstructured data, NoSQL data stores like MongoDB, Couchbase, and others are getting more and more popular. Now, the transactional data are actually fueling the analytical data stores in order for them to come up with trend graphs, dashboards, and so on, and help understanding data patterns and power business intelligence application. So depending on the nature of a business, there are cases where a huge amount of data, variably structured and a very high speed are collected. The 3 V's come into place, right? Well, this is where big data term comes from. Now, Trustwave has a long history in securing relational workloads, while in the last few years, more and more data stores are added in the supported asset types for all the flavors of modern data stores in here. So relational, NoSQL, data warehouses, as well as big data, Hadoop, more specifically supported by Trustwave tools. Now, let's see how Trustwave approaches data and database security. Well, for Trustwave, database security is an ongoing process, right, that involves continuous assessment and continuous protection. I'm sure this diagram is familiar to DevOps and SecOps folks, but it really makes sense for the database security lifecycle as well. So let me quickly take you through each step of this process. In step number 1, it's all about creating your inventory. So you cannot protect what you don't know. So building your inventory is the first step in the whole process. After you do that, in step number 2, database specific vulnerability assessment is taking place. And when we say vulnerability assessment, we mean identifying database code vulnerabilities, missing patches, misconfigurations, default settings, or password-related vulnerabilities. Both authenticated and unauthenticated scans using scan policies applicable to the regulation framework the business must comply with, like GDPR or PCI DSS or HIPAA or SOX or FISMA in the States, are available by both Trustwave products out of the box. And we will see that how it looks like in the demo in a minute. So the output of step number 2 provides all sorts of reports, graphs, and remediation guidelines for every single finding, so that the DBAs can follow and fix those findings. This is what step number 3 here is all about. In step number 4, we have a different type of scan. It is always authenticated this time and aims at identifying configured users, their effective privileges, and how those privileges were granted. Was it implicitly or explicitly? So all of those things are reported as part of the user rights review scan, as we call it. Step number 4 actually concludes our continuous assessment approach, which is always agentless. You don't require to install any agent software on the target database. It's delivered agentlessly. So a few words about our 2 products. We have Detective Pro, which is our tactical, ad hoc, point and shoot database specific scanner that is lightweight. It's a lightweight application and it's able to install on laptops or servers running Windows user operating system like Windows 7, 8, or 10. Of course, it can install on server operating system, but it's positioned to be installed on lightweight, let's say, operating system. DbProtect, on the other hand, is our enterprise-grade tool that enables businesses to operationalize on their database security program. Has richer reporting and analytic features than Detective Pro, has multiple and scalable components that run only on Windows Server operating system. And on top of that, DbProtect only implements real-time activity monitoring. So again, DbProtect only, not UpDetective Pro, is able to deliver the real-time activity monitoring. So with DbProtect, we're able to define what normal is using a fine-grained activity monitoring policy, allows for effective real-time monitoring for improper access controls, anomalies, and so on, and also trigger alerts and automatic responses when anything outside the defined normal is identified. Now, automatic responses such as killing the live session and disabling the database user involved in the unauthorized activity, or triggering syslog notification or email notification or SNMP traps, or even execute any scripted action are part of DbProtect's activity monitoring capabilities. And we'll see a lot more when we go to the actual demo. Of course, we're all very well aware that the vast majority of the businesses today are already migrated or will soon migrate to a cloud-native database, right? So as a result, Trustwave database security tools already support on-premise to cloud or cloud to on-premise scanning of several standalone or cloud-native databases, and we continuously add more vendors and versions in our supported asset lists. So whatever you see here, it just is not exhaustive, right? So more data stores are available to be scanned. I'm just showing here the cloud-native stores and the most popular on-premise stores that we're able to protect today. Okay, so let's wrap everything up. UpDetective Pro is Windows software-based, tactical, lightweight, point and shoot, database-specific scanner that implements vulnerability assessment, user rights reviews, and allows for control reviews in order to create reporting or policy exceptions or control additions if we want. We can create controls from scratch if that's what we want. While as part of the vulnerability remediation findings, we can generate suggested fix scripts for vulnerabilities that lend themselves to a fix script that we can automatically create and provide to our customers. Now, DbProtect, as I said, is the enterprise class database security tool that allows businesses to implement an ongoing program for continuous assessment and continuous protection. Vulnerability assessment and rights management functionality deliver the continuous assessment part of the methodology, while activity monitoring delivers the continuous protection bit of our methodology. Just to give you an overview of what we mean when we say that DbProtect is the enterprise class tool, and it is the database security program enabler. This is a diagram that shows how DbProtect can scale to meet the distributed architecture of a large enterprise. So at the heart of DbProtect, you have the management and monitoring component called the console, which has its dedicated backend repository that stores the scanning and monitoring data. Now, distributed components like the scan engine and host sensors are deployed close or on database assets respectively in order to deliver the actual scans and collect results, as well as monitoring alerts, which is applicable to activity monitoring. And then they are securely, that is encrypted, communicated over to the console for representation and driving dashboards and extracting reports. Do you have any questions so far? Everything is clear and understood?
Yeah, seems yes, no question
The silence is compliant. Huh? Good. So it's now time for our demos. And my aim here is not to show you every button and function available in the tools. Obviously, we will not have enough time to do that for both products. But I will show you how easy it is to quickly identify critical vulnerabilities on the databases we support, identify highly privileged users who have access to sensitive data, and also spend some time showing you how continuous assessment and continuous protection looks like when DbProtect is implemented in your security infrastructure. So let me share my other screen now, which is this one. So I will start with App Detective Pro. So this is our lightweight tactical database-specific scanner. It's a thick application that it can be installed on even Windows user operating system. So this is the actual landing page when you fire off the App Detective Pro application. So in order to start, you have to create your session, which is the container of your whole assessment. So if you're just starting, you will create your session, you will name it, and click on create. I have already done that. So let me show you how it looks like when you open your session. I have several assets already in my inventory, but I will quickly show you how you can build your inventory as part of our methodology. So first off, you can, if you have like a handful of assets, it makes sense for you to click on the new asset button here, select the type of asset you want to add in your inventory, and these are all the supported vendors today. You can see here Hadoop, Teradata, Mongo, Postgres, SAP HANA, Couchpage, and others. You select the operating system it runs on, the version of the database you want to import in your inventory. You can optionally put in your username and password that you will use for scanning in the next step, or you can do that later, and you just have to click on add here. And you just build your inventory. You have onboarded that asset in your inventory. Obviously, this one-by-one asset creation doesn't scale if you have like 10 or 20 instances. So in that case, you can use the import asset way, where you just have to follow the CSV template to populate all your known assets. And just when you do that, you click on import and you bulkily load all of them in one go. The third option to build your inventory is by starting what we call a discovery scan. So discovery scan is used in two cases. One is if a company has just acquired another company, or there's been a merge, and you don't really know where the database assets are located. You can fire off App Detective Pro and say, I want to scan a network segment. And what App Detective Pro will do, will just go out in that segment and identify the assets listening on default or custom ports, 1433 for Microsoft SQL Server, or 3306 for MySQL, and so on. And once that asset is identified, it will be imported in your inventory. That's fine. Let's say we have created our inventory. The next step is to scan for vulnerabilities, right? So all you have to do is just select the asset you want to scan for, and then you click on Run Policy. So now what you have to select is whether you want to do an authenticated scan, we call it an audit, or an unauthenticated scan, we call it a pen test. It's not an actual pen test where we're trying to actively exploit vulnerabilities. No, we're not exploiting those vulnerabilities, we're just identifying them, but we call it pen test to provide, let's say, a description of the perspective that we are providing to our customers, saying that if an attacker only had IP connectivity against your assets, this is the level of exposure that you have in that type of attacks. So obviously, if we select the authenticated scan, we will be able to identify more vulnerabilities than selecting the unauthenticated way. And we are able to select from the initial step the regulation framework we need to comply with. If it's GDPR, you can just select that. If it's HIPAA, if it's PCI DSS or any other regulatory framework, all we have to do is just select it. And from that point on, we will provide the credentials for that we will use for connecting to the target database and start interrogating that and identify as many vulnerabilities as possible. The user account we will use to scan the target database does not have to be sysadmin. We're able to deal with non-privileged account, but it makes sense that if we are using a policy that has many checks within that policy that require elevated privileges to identify vulnerabilities, if we provide, let's say, read-only and not a power user, we will not be able to execute every single test in the policy. So it's good if we are able to provide a power user. It will help us identify as many vulnerabilities as possible. Let's say that we have conducted our assessment and the scan is done. We're now ready to navigate to the policy results. So here in my demo environment, I have already executed vulnerability assessment against all those assets. So all I have to do now is start exploring the results I'm getting from App Detective Pro. So if I want to focus on something specific, say for example, I want to see the findings for the Microsoft SQL 2016 asset I have in my AWS environment, and I want to see only high and medium severity findings, I can select just that. So this is exactly what I got after I click my filter. So what I see here is that I have executed assessment twice against that asset. One is the baseline, which I identified 6 high and medium vulnerabilities, while for the best practice one I've executed, I have revealed 28 findings, highs and mediums. Some of them are pretty straightforward to understand if you're not a DBA and you have general knowledge, but some of them are not very straightforward. So what we've done is we have provided a knowledge base article for every single vulnerability you can see here in the list. So all you have to do is select it and click on the knowledge base article column at the right-hand side. So here you can get all the information you need in order to educate yourself what the vulnerability is all about, summary, fix information, asset type, CV reference, or external vendor reference or links. You can follow to learn more about the vulnerability, or if it was a missing patch, you would get a link to the vendor website that would take you to the proper part of their website to download the missing patch. So you are able to explore each of those specific findings. Here, you can select them all and extract a report, or you can select just a few of them and extract the report. It's definitely up to you on how you want to deal with the results of an assessment. When you select some or all of your results, you are able to extract reports in different depths, let's say. If you want to get a vulnerability summary, you can just go ahead and do that. If you want to go ahead and extract details, which means that you will include the verbiage available in the knowledge base article, you can do that. If you want to create a differences report summary, so you have scanned your asset twice in 2 different time frames, and in between you have remediated some vulnerabilities, you are able to extract a differences summary report. So you will see hopefully fewer vulnerabilities reported this time, so you're doing a good job remediating the vulnerabilities as you go along. You can also extract fixed scripts, as I mentioned earlier, on the vulnerabilities that lend themselves to a fixed script. That can be actually, you can prepare automatically a fixed script that the DBAs will then review and fine-tune and implement in the next maintenance window. If I can share some vulnerability reports, I have a couple of them exported already, so we're not losing too much time here. So this is a vulnerability summary report against several asset types. So you can see pretty much what we've seen in the UI, but packaged in a nice looking PDF report where you can communicate, you can print out, you can email, and so on. This is an example of a fixed script. So if you extract the fixed script, this is how the fixed script will look like. You will have the name of the asset and also what are the queries you need to run in order to remediate that specific vulnerability that the fixed script is created for, right? Good. If you want to create some reporting exception, if you say, for example, that, okay, I understand that, let's say database is not encrypted. Yes, I know that. It's a known thing. I want to toggle that as a known finding, effectively creating an exception. And I also want to give a reason for that. This is a known issue, for example. It will be solved in the next, let's say, maintenance window. So you can save that. And after you review every single finding here, you can extract a control review report. So your selection, toggling the finding to a non-finding, and your verbiage, providing the reasoning why you did that, would be part of your control review. Okay, that's fine. Now, if we want to extract some user rights review reports or deliver a user rights review assessment, same process applies. You select the asset and you say run user rights review. You will verify credentials. You will run the assessment now, exactly as you have the option to do that in your vulnerability assessment, or you can schedule that in a 24-hour window period. And once the assessment is done, you will be able to explore the user rights review results. So here, again, you can filter out the results and you can identify all the users that are configured in your assets, the roles those users have, and effective privileges. So you can extract detailed reports about all your users, what privilege they have and how they got that privilege. Was that done implicitly through a role or explicitly? And again, you can create all sorts of reports at the back of that. The same thing you can do for roles or even objects that are available within your database assets. All you have to do is, execute the assessment and start working with the results and exporting the report that makes sense for you and your role. So users, roles, or objects reports on those can be exported fairly quickly. Now, if you want to fine-tune a policy, or if you want to create some custom controls, you can easily do that with Audit Pro. You can either create a policy from scratch, or you can select, for example, best practices policy or cloud database built-in policy. You clone that, because out of the box, these are read-only. And once you do that, you are able to open it and start tuning that policy to match your likeness. So I just opened the clone baseline policy, and if I want to explore controls that are applicable for Microsoft SQL Server as an example, all I have to do is click on Add Controls for Microsoft SQL. I select the category of the controls that I want to add. And if this is something that I want to add as well as this one, I just click on Add, and they are moved across to the live version of my policy. If I want to remove a control, all I have to do is select it and click Remove. Very simple and straightforward. So if I save that policy, no, to save thing, no, I am able to just select it the next time I will drive my audit using that specific tuned policy. So I guess it's very straightforward. The UI really is very simple. I'm sure you will agree to that. And as part of our meetup, you will be able to get some trial licenses for 60 days just for Audit Pro. So you will be able to play with product and see the value and the strength it has. You can drive your own assessment in your test environment and see where they are at in terms of their level of security maturity. Do you have any questions before we move to DbProtect?
Seems not, we can move forward.
Perfect. Okay, so this is now the DbProtect UI. So here, it's no longer an application, it's a web interface. And the landing page is the inventory page. So here I have a lot of assets in my inventory, AWS assets, Azure assets. I have a Teradata thing at the bottom. Go here. Several assets. Same logic applies here as we mentioned in the Audit Pro section. If you want to build your inventory using the one-by-one asset, you can very well do that. The same fields are available here: the name of the asset, the type of asset, the instance ID, the IP address, the port to listen to. But one of the main differences here is that DbProtect has also the term of an organization. So DbProtect, being the enterprise class tool, is able to match the organization structure of each individual business. So if you are a global bank, or if you are a health organization or governmental entity, you will be able to create the same structure for DbProtect that is applicable to your environment as well. And on top of that, you can add your assets to individual organization branch, and you can configure your users with specific roles and permissions to scan assets or monitoring assets that are available and privileged only for the organization branch you are selecting. So once you do that, you create your asset, and again, you have the option to do that bulkily via the CSV template or using a discovery job. After you create your inventory, you are able to come here to the jobs section and create your audit or pen test or user rights review, exactly like we've seen that happening in the App Detective Pro UI. So all you have to do here is select the type of assessment you want to do or job you want to trigger. Is it an authenticated assessment? Is it a non-authenticated scan? Is it a user rights review scan or custom report? Everything starts from the job creation wizard. You select the organization that this asset is applicable to or associated with. And after you do that, let's say that I have the ops audit job. You can either run it now or you can schedule it in the future. Once off, or you can do that recurrently. So depending on your use case, how frequently you want to scan your assets, DbProtect is able to do that for you, and when the time is right, it will automatically kickstart the scan and the results will be available for you. Now, assuming the assessment is triggered, executed, and finished, then you will start exploring the results in the dashboard. So what DbProtect has in terms of findings exploration is obviously the dashboards we see here, and you have different tables or graphs that you are able to explore in a click and drill in fashion. So the more you click each individual asset, which is either misconfigured or unpatched or both, the more you drill into what vulnerabilities have been identified for that specific asset. So you can have on top the pie chart or bar graphs that represent all the findings for that specific asset on the different categories, misconfigurations, improper access controls, and so on. And you can even further click and drill into each individual finding that makes sense for you. And of course, you can export the reports in different formats, PDF, XML, or CSV. Now, if you have, let's say, assets that have users which are highly privileged and also associated with a password vulnerability, think of a DBA level user that has password 1 as his password, then you have to be notified straight away, and this is what this table is actually showing. The toxic combination of having highly privileged users associated with password vulnerabilities, and you absolutely need to remediate that straight away. If you want to extract reports or you want to explore findings by severity across the board of your organization, you can select that from the pencil on the top right hand corner. you can absolutely click on the findings by severity, high, medium, and low, and you can drill into the findings that you want to focus on. The trend graph we see here is a good representation of how your DBAs are doing, if they're doing a good job remediating the findings on a month-over-month basis. So you would expect that the red bars would shrink and the green bars would expand as you go along, which means that the DBAs are doing a good job in remediating findings. But this type of graph, it's not abnormal, because maybe in May, for example, you have onboarded 3 more assets in your inventory, you have executed scans against those as well, so the number of findings have expanded reasonably during the May timeframe. So several other graphs and charts are available with DbProtect explicitly around user rights review. When you execute a user rights review scan, straight away you see the most privileged users, how you're doing with explicit grants, which is always a bad practice. So you definitely have to grant roles, privileges to a role and associate users to roles rather than providing privileges explicitly to a user. If that happens, DbProtect is able to identify and report on that. And also here at the bottom, we have several trend graphs that are applicable to our environment. If you see an uptick to highly privileged users, maybe this is something you need to investigate, click and further drill into that specific, let's say, point in your assessment. Now, when it comes to activity monitoring, everything is driven from this part of the UI. You install your host sensor, our agent software that sits on the database server. And what you're actually doing, you are establishing communication with the console. This is what the green tick means here. So my console communicates properly with my SQL 2016 host sensor, obviously installed on a Microsoft SQL box that has an instance called SQL 2016. And what you're able to do after that, you are able to start defining your activity monitoring policy. What exactly you want your agent software to report as abnormal. So several out-of-the-box policies are available, or you can create one policy from scratch. So if you are, for example, to create your activity monitoring policy for your Microsoft SQL Server, and you want to audit events, or you want to be notified on password-related attacks, or buffer overflows, or privilege escalation, you just make your selection here. So let me show you how granular the DbProtect policy definition is. So in terms of audit events, we present you all sorts of DML, DDL, or DCL commands that you can execute on a Microsoft SQL box. Same logic applies to an Oracle box or any other vendor and version we support for monitoring. All you have to do is make your selection. You say, for example, I want to be notified every time my sensor identifies an altered table statement executed. How do I want to be notified? Do I want to be notified with an alert in near real time, or I want to create a log entry for that? If I want an alert, I have to select high, medium, or low severity or risk level, as we call it, And if I want it to be just an entry in my logs, I will select it to be informational 1, 2, 3, 4, and different types of informational levels are explained here. It's either interval-based parameterless SQL or exact time, exact SQL statement will be captured and reported. So all I have to do is make my selection that makes sense. Of course, I can create all sorts of filters and exceptions that would allow me to generate meaningful alerts that I have to chase up, not create hundreds of alerts that would overwhelm the SOC personnel. So you are able to create, for example, an alert only when specific conditions are met. Say, for example, I want to fire off an alert when DBA John Smith is using Microsoft SQL Studio or Todd or SQL Plus or any other client application to interact with SQL 2016, for example, instance on that specific database, call it HR data. Even on a specific column, you can very well define a specific column, and after that, you can couple that alert with specific statements. Say, I want to create a notification when John Smith is trying to update a record in that specific column, or if he tries to delete data from that table, or if he tries to do inserts or any other activity with that specific table, I will be notified. And on top of that, I'm able to create automatic responses. So if somebody interacts with my data in a malicious way, I'm able to kill the session, disable that user, so he will not be able to log back in without a DBA involvement to unlock his account, or trigger syslogs or SNMP traps or email notifications, or run any scripted action for that matter. Now, what I want to show you, other than this UI, is how our new UI looks like. So this is the next generation of our portal. So as you can see, it's fairly modern, pretty much redesigned from scratch compared to the previous one. So straight away when we log in, our Explorer UI, as we call it, we get this landing page. So here we have the security overview, where we have straight away bar graphs regarding the vulnerabilities identified and sorted by categories, high, medium, and lows. And if I click on improper access controls or misconfigurations, I will be taken to that specific category of the vulnerability that I just selected. So if I click on misconfigurations, I'm redirected to this screen, which shows all the high severity misconfigurations for all the assets that I have scanned so far. From this view, if I click an individual one, I will be presented with the knowledge base detail, similarly to what we've seen with App Detective Pro, so I can educate myself on what exactly this vulnerability is all about, how to fix it, and so on. If I want to expand from here to improper access controls or patchable vulnerabilities, and I also want to include medium severity as well, I'm just making my selection, and now everything is recalculated and I get the result that I asked for. If I scroll down a bit to the bottom, I see a timeline representation of all my assessments so far. And again, if I click, I will be redirected to a similar page as we've seen before that shows me all the vulnerabilities that are applicable to my selection. Same goes with the alerts, and I will get there in a minute. At the bottom, we have a nice graph that shows the our asset inventory by type. So I have several assets here. I have IBM DB2, Microsoft Azure, SQL Server, MongoDB, and others. So if I click on each individual one, I will be again redirected to all the findings applicable to those assets. Now, if you are, let's say, a data protection officer, and you don't really care about details, more than likely you would like to be presented with a high-level overview of the risk associated with your environment in terms of either data store type or severity. So we provide the high-level overview at the organization risk widget, where you can include all the descendants of your organization, or you just exclude that and have just for the individual selection you've made. And again, from here, you can select whichever portion of the graph makes sense for you. Just click it and you get redirected to the findings you just selected. Again, another timeline graph here that shows you how hard you've been hit if you have exposed your assets to the internet. And this is what we've done really, and just to get some more real world data. And that's why we see spikes left and right. But at the bottom, we also have nice data visualization graphs when it comes to both real-time alerts and also vulnerability findings and non-findings. So straight away, if you want to see web application related attacks or password attacks or audit events, all you have to do is just highlight the portion of the graph, click it, and you will be again redirected to another view that shows exactly what you asked for. Same is applicable for the vulnerabilities graph. We have the findings and non-findings. If you want to see the things that you're not vulnerable, but still DbProtect check that for you, just to make sure you're not vulnerable, all you have to do is select the type or the portion of the graph, and you will be again redirected exactly to that part of the screen. So if I do, for example, I want to see all the real-time alerts that are associated with my SQL 2016 assets, I can see everything, medium risk, or if I want to expand to high risk, I am able to do that as well. So everything related to the policy we have defined, all the attack patterns or auditing all the DML, DDL, or DCL statements I've selected in my policy. If I have a match, I will see that in this audit screen or alert screen. And again, I can get information about that specific rule and what it really means for me in order to get myself educated about that. If I want to explore alerts themselves, I will do that from the alert screen. I can select the relevant organization branch or the time frame that I want to focus on, or risk level. I can even select some filters saying, well, I want to look for rules that don't select the word password. I don't really care about that. So here you are able to see everything else, SQL injections, grant statements, revoke statements, user table insert, and so on. If I'm making a selection, I'm seeing information about that specific alert. If I double click it, I can get even the actual SQL statement that was applicable and DbProtect activity monitoring was able to identify and present for us. Now, what we've also done, we've created this exploration graph, which is a dynamic representation and really allows us to start exploring the findings from every angle we want. Do we want to start exploring from the asset level? Say, for example, what are the findings for, let's say, my SQL 2016 asset? We can absolutely do that. And the more we click, the more we expand our graph dynamically, and we are able to make another selection, see what are the vulnerable users associated with that specific instance, what are the high, medium, and low severity alerts, or what are the high vulnerabilities. So the more I click, the more information I get. And if I see something that catches my eye, say, for example, application integrity, I can do a shift click and I will add that to my scratchpad. It's a script password attack. So it's shift click and it will be added to my scratchpad. And if I want to explore highs or mediums or lows, I am able to again do that from this absolutely do that in a later phase of your exploration. You can also create the similar, let's say, timeline where you want to focus your exploration, or you can just toggle out the vulnerabilities and alerts however you feel like it. So again, if you want to explore, the vulnerable users, you are able to do that. Just click and expand that, and you can get to every information you're interested in. The last bit I wanted to show you, like in the case of App Detective Pro, again, you are free to select whatever policy you want to scan with. If you are to apply to GDPR or other frameworks, from the Explorer UI, you are able to make your selection. You can even explore the checks that are associated with each individual framework, and you can just go ahead, select the policy that is applicable to you, drive your assessment, and then come back to the Explorer and work with your assessment results. Now, in terms of reports, all sorts of reports are available with DbProtect. So if we select the reports tab, several on-demand reports are available depending on what your focus is. If you are a C-level executive or a data protection officer or a risk owner, more than likely you would like to have reports on the risk position by asset or executive overview or risk position by organization. If you are a highly technical individual, more than likely you will spend time on the check results, where you will be able to drill into individual findings, receive remediation guidelines, or compare to different reports, to different assessment, and see what's different as you went along, or explore the user rights, what are the privileges each user within your business has, how they got that privilege, and also explore your latest activity when it comes to real-time activity monitoring. So as an example, this is how the executive overview report looks like. It's a single page, applicable for CISO or C-level executive in general, where you provide the delta of the findings compared to your previous assessment, the number of assets you have in your control, trend graph, findings by category, your most privileged users, top 5 privileged users, how many assets you've scanned so far, how frequently, and with what policy. So everything in one report. Now, if you want to see your risk position by organization, you can absolutely create that and extract it from DbProtect. So you can see, straight away how good or bad your each individual organization branch is doing with improper access control, misconfigurations, and so on. The DBA view is what we've seen earlier. This report can be extracted of course, in PDF format, in CSV and XML. So the DBAs can work on that and deal with the assessment data. Now, if I show you this report comparison, findings comparison report. So what we've done here, we have executed an assessment on June 3rd at 4:14, and then we have remediated some vulnerabilities. And after that, we scanned again and extracted the findings comparison report. So the things that were initially flagged as a finding on the second scan, we have green ticks, which means that they are no longer findings. We have remediated all those. So we're doing a good job. Now, if we want to compare user privileges, we can absolutely do that as well with DbProtect. So again, on our user rights review assessment on June 4th, we've seen that that specific user, SQL admin, was not allowed to add extended procedures or add members to DB Creator, while on January, he was able to do that. So straight away, we can identify all the differences and compare the privileges the users have by comparing the results of two different scans. If we want to extract reports of users and privileges, again, we're able to extract that from the relevant section in the reports, on-demand reports. Lastly, latest activity allows us to generate reports based on the real-time alert data. So everything we've seen in the Explorer UI around drop database, drop table, user grants and revokes and all that, everything is available in our report. So the timestamp, alert ID, rule title, severity level, the login, username, the network user, the user that is logged into at the operating system level, even the client application, this is Management Studio, could be SQL Plus or anything else. All of those, let's say, properties are available in our latest activity report. Any questions I can help you with?
Yes, we have few.
Perfect.
Darius, are you fine to ask yourself, or I can read the question?
If you don't read, because I'm trying to sleep my baby right
cool.
now. So
okay, so I will read. Okay. Yeah, sure. So the first question is from Darius. Can you elaborate more on Hadoop scan and protection? Hadoop meaning exactly what components?
Right. So I guess it's applicable to both DbProtect and App Detective Pro. So when we are scanning, I will start off with how we are interacting with the target database we scan. As I said, we don't require agent software. We do that agentlessly, no agent required. So what we're actually doing, we are connecting to the target database with proper credentials if we're doing credential scan, or without credentials, just TCP/IP connection, and we start interrogating the target database, trying to reveal misconfigurations, default settings, missing patches, and all that. So those are the different categories that we see in our report, right? So let me bring that up. So different categories are applicable here. We're able to do that using our scan engine. This is how we call the component we have for both DbProtect and App Detective Pro. So we are able to reveal all the different things in the target database. Hope that answers the question.
Okay, the second question. Can we scan online databases like Firestone, CosmoDB, Aurora, etc.? As far as I remember, most of them are the cloud, like Aurora, right?
Very good question. Yes. So today we are able to scan cloud native assets. Aurora, yes, it's part of our supported asset, RDS as well. Azure SQL, yes, as well, and actually have one already scanned in our demo environment. Cosmos is not available today, but we are gradually, as I said, working towards implementing more and more asset types as we go along. Teradata, which is analytical OLAP database, is already part of our supported assets, and also, as I mentioned, Hadoop. So these are what we offer today, some examples of what we offer today, and gradually we are implementing more and more, we're supporting more and more cloud native assets.
Cool, and the next one, can I monitor Impala, Phoenix, Druid, or Drill, for example?
No, currently no, and I think there's a good reason for it. We cannot support everything under the sun, so we are actually are a few steps ahead of our customers. And when we see that some of our customers are using a specific, let's say, data stores that we don't support today, it's part of our internal evaluation or assessment. We just hear what the market says, and if we put everything in one balance, and we get a positive results, then engineering is working towards implementing that asset type. This is actually, in a nutshell, the process we follow in order to add different types of data stores in our supported list.
Okay, yeah, Darius Bro, thank you for answers. And the last question is about this 60-day free trial version. So
let me show you what actually happens. So whomever wants to kick the tires with App Detective Pro can reach out to me, and what I will do, I will generate a license that is good for 60 days. So the expiration day would be 2 months from today, and you will be able to scan a few assets. Of course, unlimited scans for the period of those 2 months will be allowed, as always, with App Detective Pro. And you will be able to just get in that screen, click on add the license, load that license, and you're good to go. You will be able to scan your assets that are licensed for the next 2 months.
Okay, and the last question, how do you license the products? Per scanned server, per instance, per what?
Very good question. So both of our products are licensed based on the number of database instances in scope. So if you are a Microsoft house, you pretty much understand what database instance is. If you are an Oracle house, we are after the number of SIDs. So each vendor perceives the database instance term a bit differently. And for that, we have created a document that explains what I've just mentioned. For Oracle, it's just SIDs. For SAP, it's data server, and so on. This is the number, this is the, let's say, the number of instances we're after in order to license and obviously quote the product. So for App Detective Pro, the number of instances is what we're after, and we will unlock the vulnerability scanning functionality and also the user rights review scanning functionality. For DbProtect, again, we're after the number of instances in scope, but the customer is free to select what functionality they want to unlock. So it's more modular for DbProtect. You are allowed to say, for example, I want to license 20 database instances for just vulnerability assessment. You can do that. Or you can say, I want to license 20 of my instances just for user rights review. Or you can say, I want to license all of them just for activity monitoring. Or if you really understand our methodology, which means that you really have to go to a proactive assessment approach and then move to the continuous protection approach, all three modules should be licensed. So you're licensing all three modules for all your assets, 20 or how many you have